Welcome back to the Musicpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Nico Santana, and this episode is brought to you by DistroKid. More on them later. Today's guest is Connor Flanagan, singer, songwriter, rapper, producer. He tours all over the world and has had an opportunity to have a blossoming career as a musician, as an artist. But he's very much a musicpreneur. He likes to get involved in managing different artists, get involved in branding and marketing his own music, contacting festivals, so on and so forth. He brings a lot of perspective to this particular episode, and while I've known him for a few years, his work ethic has shown out and shown itself to be fruitful when it comes to his music career as an independent artist. So sit back and enjoy today's podcast episode with Connor Flanagan.
Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you, bro. I have so many questions for you. I'm sure we could talk for hours, but we'll try to keep it sweet, short, and to the point because, first off, I definitely want to have you back on the podcast. So where are you based out of?
St. Paul, Minnesota. So
that's what's up.
It's cold, man. It's real cold. Yeah. It's real cold right now.
I wanted to ask you, man, so were you born and raised in that area, or what's your background, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no, I'm a transplant out here. My wife's family's from St. Paul. She was born and raised here, right in the heart of the city. I grew up in Ohio, small town just outside of Cleveland. Lived my whole life there, and then post college, a couple years after college, I was working in Pittsburgh. Lived in Pittsburgh for a few years, and long story for another time. Met my wife on a mission trip, and that's what ended up bringing me out here to Minnesota. So
that's huge, man. Is there a music scene in Ohio? Is that where you first picked up your dream or passion?
No, it's funny. There actually is a music scene. There's a pretty decent underground hip hop scene in the Christian space for sure. And then Machine Gun Kelly is popping off. Has been the last couple of years. He's from Cleveland. He's really, I think, in a secular hip hop space. I mean, he's like punk rock now, but right. He kind of put Cleveland on the map in that realm, in that genre. But no, I mean, for me, man, when I was in high school and stuff, I wasn't playing anywhere. Like, I had a little middle school band and whatnot, but we weren't anywhere close to the scene, as you would say.
So is that where you first got started with your band, or how did you get introduced to the world of music and being something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, we grew up. I mean, I just grew up in such a musical family. I played Irish instruments from the time I could remember being a kid. Grew up in a big Irish family, and so I grew up playing music. And then my parents just believed in the power of music, and they would take us to these music festivals every summer, these Christian music festivals, and we would camp there for 4 or 5 days, and you would just pay I don't know what it was, $80 a person for 5 days. And you would get to see just dozens of concerts, just morning till night. Some artists that were big headliners, others that were new on the scene. So it was kind of every summer you could discover new artists and shop the merch tents and do all that stuff. And I just fell in love with it. I just saw these guys and I was like, man, they get to do this with their lives. They get to write songs, perform them, and engage people. And not only that, but then share a deeper message behind all of it, right? A message of hope and share their faith. And I was like, man, I want to do that. I was enamored by it. I think in the purest sense of the word, not I want the stage and the lights and the fame, but I was just enamored by this is actually a possibility to use your gifts in this way. And so that's really where the seed was planted, and my parents just did a great job fostering it. They'd keep taking us to these concerts, and then one thing led to another. I picked up guitar, and then I got in a little band in middle school, and we started writing overly emotional songs, and and it just kind of one thing led to another, and I just kept kind of taking more steps, and then college and the year or two after is when I started taking it more seriously.
Now, as you know, today's episode is brought to you by DistroKid, in my opinion, the best distribution site for independent artists and musicians. DistroKid has recently launched a new product called DistroVid, where you can actually distribute your music videos. Now, a quick tip for you guys before spending a lot of money on music videos: this is the strategy that I would utilize for creating and generating new music video content. First off, release your music on DistroKid. Number 1, get out as much music as you can within an ample time frame so that you can gather the appropriate data To ensure that you have a good sound, you have built a great audience that reciprocates, and moreover, you could see what songs actually stick to that audience so that you can then do number 2, which is invest in more visuals. Once you have a song that either takes off on TikTok or gets lots of really good organic plays on places like Spotify and Apple Music, you can start to engage your audiences with kind of these organic videos on TikTok and IG Reels, even YouTube Shorts, using that song. Number 3 then would be to invest in either some video recording software and or cameras, or better yet, if you're a novice in recording videos, hire a company to do an amazing job to create a professional looking visual so that you can then distribute it to places like Vivo and Apple Music for videos, and this can all be distributed through DistroVid. That's what I would do moving forward. Music videos are not played out, definitely very much needed in today's market, but you can have a bunch of iterations and tests and then finally distribute through DistroVid. So go ahead and sign up to distrokid.com/VIP/Nico and Santana to begin distributing your music through DistroKid today, and sign up to distrovid.com, $99 a year for unlimited music video uploads. Again, creating your own Vivo channel and being able to upload your videos on places like Apple Music and more. Now back to the podcast.
You started very early. It sounds like you got that exposure early on, but at what point in time would you say you officially said, all right, this is what I want to do? You picked up the guitar, you picked up recording instrumentation, like in instruments rather.
Yeah.
When was that, and how long has it been since then?
Oof, man. There's like kind of 2 answers to that question. I would say, I went to a college where there was a bunch of people who played guitar. Everyone was like a worship leader. It felt like that. Everyone wanted to be a songwriter. And so you were just kind of swimming in that water. And so there's a lot of people to either write with or play with. And so I started writing in college, and that's when I was like, where everyone else was doing singer-songwriter stuff or like worship music, I like to rap, and all I knew how to do was play my acoustic guitar. And so I would just like write rap songs to my guitar, and it was different, and I was the only one doing it. So it actually kind of started to pick up some steam on campus. Like people would want me to play at open mics or coffee house events or whatever, and it was just kind of cool. I was like, oh dang, like this, like people want to hear this, and it's actually bringing value. And so there's that moment where it's like, hey, like something started to shift in college where it's like, I think God has something for me in this, and I can do something with this. And then there's like that journey of like college till, so that would have been 2009, 10, somewhere in there to like 2014 or 15. So 4 or 5 years of that, of just kind of like playing whatever show I could get my hands on, traveling around to all these different churches, trying to craft and cut my teeth in the live performance space for like 5 kids to 100 kids, got my hands on some bigger youth conferences, so got a little more exposure there. But then really like 2016 is when I had a chance to make an album in Nashville, and I started to get connected with like industry people. And that's where it shifted of like, okay, I'm going to incorporate, and like, I think I can like do this. Not just like, hey, God, it's possible and God might have this for your life, but it's like, oh, I actually have to really double down on this if I want it to go anywhere. So 2016-ish is where I say, like, when people say, like, how long have you been professionally pursuing music? I'll say, like, 6, 7 years now. 8 years, somewhere in there.
That's amazing, man. It's funny because I think it's so easy to get down on yourself, especially early on when you're, like, in the year or 2 mark, and you're like, man, I've been doing this for a year, 2 years, and, this guy over here is blowing up, or, the whole comparison game.
Oh.
But you don't realize I think I saw you post about this the other day about, hitting that 10-year mark, where most businesses, that's when you actually start to see, it bloom, right? And
crazy.
That put a lot of perspective in me for sure. And hearing your journey, man, I mean, it makes sense. You've been doing this for at least honing in on your skills for some time. So it shows. I mean, it really shows. You're really good at, you mentioned, getting bookings, and now you're landing bigger stages. What's that journey been like for you? And if you don't mind just sharing a little bit of kind of the behind the scenes of what it takes to do it, more so as an indie artist.
One of the best pieces of advice I'd ever been given was, I was at a conference in college, and again, kind of starry-eyed looking at these musicians on the stage saying like, I want to be them, I want to do it. And so I went up to them after, I went up to this worship leader and I said, like, basically I was looking for free handouts, if I'm being honest. I was like, I wanted this guy to do it for me. And he was so gracious, and he just looked at me and said, hey, like, the best thing I can tell you is never say no to an opportunity. He's like, whatever comes your way, like, never say no to an opportunity. And obviously, as you get older and life circumstances and stuff change, like, I have a whole different approach to that now. But, like, early on, when I was single and I was hungry, and I was like, I took that to heart, and I played every single show I could get my hands on, no matter how awkward the youth group was, or how sparse and unattentive the audience at the coffee shop was, or how vulgar an audience at the bar would have been. Like, wherever I ended up, I was like, look, this is like, who am I to turn these opportunities down? I'm the one here saying, like, God, give me an opportunity to play my music live. And then they come. And I think a lot of young artists are like, yeah, but that's not the opportunity I wanted. And it's like, yo, that's a stage. Like, you get up there and you earn that audience, you know, you earn their respect, you earn their attention. And I love that. I have just come to love, to me, it's just like, you know, it's almost like you're just like stepping up, you know, next up, you know, game's on the line, like full count. And you're just like, right before I walk out on a stage, I'm like, I get to like win them over. You know, I get to like win this game right now. So that has like transformed over the years of like, okay, I'm going to just play whatever show I want, or whatever show comes my way I can get my hands on, to then when you have a family and you get married, it has changed a little bit. But there's been like 3 kind of boxes that for my booking process now that we check as a family, where it's like, if we can check 2 out of the 3, then we take it. So does it make sense financially? Does it work with our calendar? And is it part of the vision? And usually if we can check 2 of those, I'll, you know, as a family, I can commit to the gig. So if it's like, yeah, it makes sense financially and it's part of the vision, but it doesn't work for my calendar, well, let's free up the calendar so I can take it. If it works for my calendar, doesn't work financially, but it's part of the vision, it's probably still worth me taking it, you know? So that's been like a really good, rarely is there one where it like doesn't check any boxes and I'll still take it, or it checks 1 of the 3. It usually somewhere fits into those 2 of the 3 boxes. And that's been really helpful for us as a family pursuing music, of like, making sure it's a financially responsible pursuit. But I got to tell you, a lot of my shows in the last 2 years have not checked the financially responsible box, right? It's just like, we make it work on the calendar and it's part of the vision and we believe in it. And that's really been a big part, is when I would say the summer before the pandemic started is when I first jumped into the festival world. Because I was like, I grew up going to these festivals. Like, I grew up finding new artists. This must be a place where new artists can get exposure. So I'm going to start here. So I just started cold calling. I just, you know, went online. I Googled Christian music festivals. I made a list. I mean, I went down every Google page. I made a list of 100 festivals or so. And I just was relentless. I was working a full-time job. So I'd take my lunch break, 35, 45 minutes every day. I'd make 4 or 5 phone calls. And I would just refine my pitch, you know, of like who I was as an artist, what I could bring to their festival, get to the point really quick, because they don't want to, I mean, you can hear it in their voice. Like, if you get through to somebody who matters at these places, like, you know, they're getting off the phone with like the headlining acts, and somehow I got through. So now they're on the phone with me, and it's like, they want a link in their hand to listen to something immediately and hear why you matter. And that's really it, you know? And so I've refined that over the years of like really learning how to like get to the heart of it quick without trying to sell or oversell it. And, you know, there's all kinds of tips and tricks in there of like what I do once I'm actually on the phone, and how quickly I follow up with emails and what my emails look like. The information's out there. The contact info is out there. You just have to dig, like good old fashioned, put the hours in on Google, and any touch point these places have. I was just like, I'm just going to find it. Like, I'm not going to take no for an answer. So if there wasn't a contact info on the website, I'd be like, man, maybe their Instagram would have it. And then it wouldn't. But then I'd click on the little drop down arrow and there'd be like the contact button. And then you look and it's like, oh, there's a phone number. And you call the phone number. And I kid you not, I did that for this one festival, and it went directly to the owner of the festival.
No way.
And I was like, why aren't more people like calling these guys, you know? So there's just like, once you get into it, and if you're willing to like be relentless, you know, you can turn over a lot of stones and be successful in
it. The first time I heard of that approach was actually in a conversation with you, maybe a year or 2 ago, where you were kind of just breaking down your process of how you were cold calling. And it's crazy because I come from the sales world. Like, I've had to cold call people for my day job. Yeah. And I never thought of applying that to music, especially in my younger years when I had a lot more flexibility to travel and stuff. And it was like such a genius move of you, man. I gotta give you props, bro, because that's like it's intense. But if you believe in the product, I mean, that's where a lot of entrepreneurs really break through that barrier, is being a relentless, and then be trying kind of tried and true methodologies to, if you really believe in the product, get it in front of the right people. Prospecting, you did that. Cold calling, following up with emails, you did that. I mean, that's huge, man, and it shows. Obviously, it shows. Now that you have kind of the system in place, how did you get to that place where you knew, hey, this makes sense for our family, this makes sense for what we have going on? Did you know that off the top when you spoke to your wife, or is that something that you guys kind of had to, I don't know, disagree on, or what have you? Was there conflict there about that to get that to happen?
There was never any intentional conflict. I think the conflict that would arise would just be like the busyness of life, right? So we would just,
Right.
and then we would both be frustrated. Like it wasn't like I want to do this and you don't. It was both like, man, this is good, and we're just in a busy season, and like, man, does this make sense? Or like, how can we make this make sense? You know? And so I would say we got to a place where music was bringing in enough money where my wife could stay home from work. And so we were kind of like, hey, if you're home with the kids, then I can travel more, you know? So I was still working full time, so I was gone during the day. She was working too. She was a teacher. So we'd both be gone during the day, juggling childcare. Then, you know, we'd get to Friday, she'd get off work, then I'd hop on a flight to my next show. And it was just kind of like, that was too much for us. And so we're like, okay, if we can kind of forecast this out and be like, I can play enough shows to cover what you were making, then that was kind of the first step. Let's do that. And then once we did that, it was like, okay, well, Connor, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to be a youth group retreat worship leader with your life? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And it was, and you know, because I could have, if I really wanted to, I could have quit my job and just done that kind of stuff full time and made a lot of money probably. But I would have been gone every weekend, and it wouldn't have been building a business or building a career. It would have just kind of been doing the, I don't know, gig to gig to gig to gig. And so we were like, let's hone in on the vision. What do we want? Like, I'm so passionate about hip hop. I'm so passionate about the live performance. Like I'm really passionate about bridging the gap in the church and uniting the church with music. I think I have a gift in this space. And so we were just like, this is what we want to do. Then let's figure out a way to try to get more of those types of shows. And so that's when like I started to invest in my own lighting and learned like DMX lighting, how to program a light show. And so that way when churches would call saying, can you come to our retreat? And I was like, you know, like I could, but I could also bring this instead. And people were like, wait, what? You know, I'm like, yeah, I'll come give a talk, but can I actually give the talk within the course of my concert? You know, so I'll do my show and just share like a witness throughout the flow of the songs. And, so I just kind of started, but I was very on top of the branding. I would make sure people, when they would market it to their audience, they would say, hey, we're going to have a concert at the retreat. And so it just really helped for us solidify like the vision we're after. It helped my audience understand like this is what he's doing and this is what he wants. And then to start to value it, to be like, nothing elevates a retreat at a church like a hip hop concert. Like people walk away from that, like it just brings this weird level of validation to like what they're doing. So yeah, so it, you know, we're still figuring it out, but I think we just honed in on like, what do we actually want this music career to look like? And then let's chase those shows and do what we have to do to get those, rather than just chasing down money by taking whatever gig comes our way. And that's brought a lot of peace, you know? But it gets crazy when the shows do start coming. It's like, oof, you know, like this is a lot.
Yeah, it's a balance, man. I honestly, I give you props. I don't know how you do it. I got 3 little ones, man, and it's a challenge for me to leave, for me to be apart from my kids, and mostly because I work from home, and so there's that reliance of like, I know that you know, my son kind of relies on me, my daughters rely on my wife, and when I'm not home, it's like it's a lot for her. But hey, more power to you guys. I wanted to kind of highlight and kind of extract some of the things that you were talking about in terms of building your own music brand. So I see it in 2 ways, right? There's kind of like the gigging artist, where in typical like church lingo, it's like, yeah, you're the retreat leader, you're the person that gets hired for a certain function, so you're kind of like the gigging artist. And then there's the person who builds their own music brand, has their own following, and now you get to put on your own production, and you have enough of a following where, hey, I can go on the road, hit these 5 cities. I know that there's at least 100 people here, whatever it's going to take to cover my expenses. And then eventually, it'll actually turn over a profit. Where do you see yourself in that kind of spectrum?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in that?
I mean, the goal is the latter for sure. Like, I think that's, I just think, going back to like, I think what I posted on Instagram, I have a line in a song that says it takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Right.
I'm 8 years in and I'm ready for what's next,
Yeah.
I think so many people give up. And 10 years is just the theoretical 10 years. Like, so many people give up before they even get close to that. And
Right.
and I think the whole, like, build your following, build your audience so you can go play a show in a city, like, that is a hard thing to accomplish. Like, it is so hard. And even now, like, so we're kind of in a middle ground where it's like, hey, it's almost like I sell a product to the event organizer and then they invite the people, right? So I can be like, hey, like, we're booking this tour right now called Steadfast Love Tour, my friend Dana, Catherine, and I, and, we have a set price. For this price, it covers everything. So for a lump sum, everything's covered. And then if you want to sell tickets on your end, great. What we're finding now is, like, colleges and universities have budgets for events. So, they'll pay out to bring us in, and then they're just putting on a free event for their students. Churches have that too if they're on top of things. And so that's kind of where I'm finding the lane right now to bring in my own kind of product, my own show in a way to, like, still make money off of it. I've done ticketed shows we did one in Cleveland, and it's great. Like, we sold 70 tickets, which to me was awesome. I was like,
that's huge. Yeah.
70 tickets for a show is great. And we walked away with a couple $100 each and paid the band. And even that was, like, a huge moment. Like, that just felt like, dang, like, there was no money on the line. We paid in to get this venue, and, like, we came out on top. It was like, all right, that's what this is. That's what we're shooting for.
That's a dream. Yeah.
So it's I think, and that's shifted over the years. Like, I still desire that, but I also very, very much desire to pour into other artists, and I've been building other things on the side to potentially, move into that space as well. So, like, my dream is still to be, I would like to have the audience to do the shows when they work, but not to have to rely on a crazy year-long regular, like, touring schedule to make ends meet.
I did want to say this, man. Like, it's so cool that you were so, like, the humility within you, and I think that's where artists kind of fail, to take on all those shows early on, the free shows, the 3-person shows. I mean, I've been in places where I had to perform in front of 2 people under, like, a covered tent for, like, an hour and a half, and it was like grueling. But those are the experiences that mold us, man. And I appreciate you saying that, bro. So now that you're kind of, like, more refined in your strategy and your process, and you're investing into other artists, what's that been like for you, and how are you seeing those artists kind of, I don't know, go through what you've gone through, or are they not having to go through that themselves?
It's so hard because I'm in this, like, my wife and I are in this conversation regularly right now if I should quit the artist route and be a manager, because I just like have such a heart for it, and it just blows my mind, because I am not the most talented artist. Like, vocally, I don't think I'm that good of a songwriter. Like, actually, songwriting is my weakest link. Like, I have to spend so much time on my songs to get them where I want them, on both sides, production and lyrics, but even, like, more specifically lyrically. Like, it just takes a lot of work, whereas the marketing side and the video content and the vision for artist trajectory and all that stuff is just, like, my brain is always firing. And I see these other artists out there that I become friends with that are, like, legitimately have, 10 times the amount of natural talent that I have, but they have zero work ethic, bro. Like none. You're just like, just like looking at them like, what are you waiting around for? Like, you're single and you say you're trying to do this music thing full time. Like, get after it, So I actually don't. I gotta be, if I'm brutally honest, I do not see anybody else really doing what I'm doing in my close circles. I know they're out there. Like, I know there are artists out there hustling, but in the networks that I'm in, I get a similar response from most people when they're like, wait, how did you get that gig? Or, like, I'll go to Nashville and I'll line up all these meetings, and then I'll get together with my friends and they're like, wait, how are you meeting with that person? And I'm like, I just DM'd them on Instagram. Or I spent a couple months like cheering them on and sharing their content, and then I sent them a message and they were like, oh yeah, bro, I know who you are. You comment all the time. Like, yeah, let's grab coffee. Like there's actually a strategy behind it.
Yeah.
But it's just like, people I just think aren't, and maybe it's our culture and that we all live behind our phones all the time, but I think people just like don't think to be like, hey, just reach out like regularly, like every day. Like, and this is what I'm keeping track of now. Like, I send 2 booking emails minimum every day. Even if I think they're dumb, it's just the habit. Like, even if I think there's no shot at me getting that gig, like I send at least 2 every day.
And sometimes it's a confidence thing. Sometimes it's like, do you really want it? Because this is what it takes to get there. Like, you want the byproduct of it, which everybody does. I mean, who doesn't want, the success and the limelight and the things that, kind of enamored you when you first started in a sense, right? Not to that degree, but
yeah,
who doesn't want it? But it's like, I mean, it's like starting a family. Like, at the end of the day, you see the pretty pictures and the Christmas cards and all that stuff. But like the 99.9% of what people don't see is like the grueling late nights, early mornings, finances, personal finances, all the other stuff. And it's like, you have to learn to love that in order to truly love your family. And in the same vein, I think that's kind of what you're getting at here. So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough challenge. And if you don't have need or that strong, willful desire, I don't think you can learn that. And as you said, there's a lot of great artists out there. I've experienced I completely understand where you're coming from. I definitely don't consider myself talented or anything like that, but the persistence was what kept me going. And I unfortunately have seen so many really good, talented artists like not put in half the effort that I put in and just not do anything for themselves, which sucks because they're really talented.
I know, man. It genuinely makes me want to be like, man, should I just quit and cheer? Like I feel like right now I could quit and there's like 5 artists literally that I would go to and be like, let me help you like blow up. Like, I will give you all my contact. Like, yeah, it's just, for me, it's, especially because I go around, right? So I've played festivals in a bunch of different states. I've been around the country, and I'm watching the artists who are on these stages, and I'm like, I have friends, and I know it's not a comparison game, but just objectively, I was like, I know people who could bring way more value to these festivals. Like, how did this person get through? And I'm like, it's probably just because these other people didn't try. So I've been like pretty loud about that with the people that I know, and anytime I'm in conversation with musicians, I'm like, look, just start calling. Like, there are opportunities out there, there are shows to be played, there are stages to own. You just got to really put the work in, I
don't want to keep this conversation going without giving people the opportunity to really visit all your channels, because there's a lot more of some of this type of content, and also your artistry, who you are as a musician, that's there on all your social channels. So I'll definitely link all that stuff once this podcast goes live. Anything else that you wanted to add that was really in your heart tonight that you wanted to share with the audience, or just, I don't know, throughout this conversation that we didn't get a chance to touch on?
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about this a lot. I was just at a gathering with musicians, one of our Dayton Avenue culture nights, and which is just a kind of a creative community of musicians that we get together quarterly. And a couple musicians that asked me, what's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 3 years of your music career? And I had to I was kind of stumbling over it. I was like, man, and on one hand, I've learned so much, and then on the other hand, I was like, what do I say? I don't know what to say. But I think what I ended up landing on, which I think is genuinely true, is, God's timing is everything. And it sounds so cliche, but I could point to probably 10 different shows. Heck, even the show I just played 3 weeks ago was probably one of the biggest shows of my career for multiple reasons. If I would have gotten the opportunities I wanted when I wanted them, I would have failed just abysmally. I would have not had, I just look at some youth conferences as a 20-year-old kid, I was looking up at these people thinking I could do that better. Then I get on that same stage 6 or 7 years later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I never would have been able to do this at 20, and we had an opportunity to open for David Crowder, and I was like, man, if I would have been on this stage when I wanted it, I wouldn't have had the music, I wouldn't have the knowledge around merch, I wouldn't have had the branding. There's just God, time and time again, God is yo, I got this. Like, I'm going to give you the opportunities when it is time. And that's the biggest thing I would just say to any artist. Like, trust the process, like genuinely trust the process, and trust God with the timing in all of it. Cause he will like put you on the stages he wants you on when he needs you there, not when you want to be there. And it's been so like, it's been amazing. My eyes are just being like open to that every day of like, dang, he really is paving the way for this thing. If I got my foot on the gas, but he's paving the road, and it's been cool to be a part of it.
Thanks again to our guest, Connor Flanagan, for joining us on this episode. It was recorded a couple months back, but the information is very pertinent even to today. So I appreciate him coming on the podcast. I appreciate our sponsor, DistroKid, and I appreciate you guys for staying tuned, watching this entire episode, or listening, depending on where you're consuming the content. Make sure if you're on YouTube to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Nico Santana. Again, my name is Nico Santana, your host here on the Musicpreneur Podcast. A big thank you to Martinez Production Group for helping us out with the edit of this podcast, and of course my company, NTS Media, for producing the podcast and directing it. Much love, guys. Until next time.